pals, I'm here today to talk about my reading stats and my sort of TBR zero goals for the past 2 months. So every other month I do a check-in video. I talk about the books that I've read off my TBR, the books I've added to my TBR, and like anything else about my reading I would like to chat about. And this is the video where I focus on May and June, but I figured because we're halfway through the year, I'd make this video a little bit longer and I'd reflect in totality on the last 6 months and see if anything about my reading in those 6 months has made me reconsider how I should do things going forward. And they certainly have, so this may be a long video. So these videos are so hard to structure because I have this little reading journal. It's not pretty at all, like it's just, I literally just use a black biro and just write shit down and don't use a ruler and everything's rubbish. So, you know, it's not worth showing you. But I've got lots of things that are being tracked on like different pages, so it's sometimes a little bit hard to keep track. So I'm going to focus on each month and then sort of reflect back. So we'll talk about May first. In May, I only read 5 books, which is definitely below what I like to read. It was a busy month, but also, we'll talk about this in a minute, I DNF'd a lot of books, and I think the combination of being busy and then DNFing a lot of books is quite demoralising, and so I think I then was like put off picking up more books because I'd had such a sort of bad success rate with DNFing. So out of the 5 books I read, one of them was an audio and one of them was an ebook, so that didn't help me reduce my physical TBR at all. And then out of the other 3 books I read, one of them was from my pre-2022 shelves and 2 of them were books I'd hauled this year and then read. So yeah, May didn't really help me much in terms of reducing my physical TBR. Now, one other thing I think I want to comment on in these videos is my page count. I didn't do this for the first couple of months, but I think I did it for the last couple. And the reason I decided to start looking at that is because sometimes I'm put off picking up a bigger book because it's going to take me longer and I won't read as many books, but also because I don't talk about the books I've DNF'd in depth on the channel. I talk about them each month on a Patreon video, so if you're interested in watching that, Patreon is always linked down below. I thought I wanted to try and capture the books I read physically, the books I listened to on audio, and then the books I DNF'd, like separately as different page counts, because I think it will help me figure out like what works for me as a reader. So in May, in total, I read 2,506 pages, and that was including the 5 books I finished, but I also DNF'd 8 books. So out of the 5 books I finished, only one of them was, like I said, an audio, that was 288 pages, and then the other 4 books totaled 1,225. But then the 8 books I DNF'd totaled 993 pages. So yeah, a lot, sadly. And I don't really like to drop below reading 3,000 pages a month, and ideally I'd like those 3,000 pages to be books I've finished. So 2,506, including all those DNFs, is much lower than where I'd want it to be, so that isn't great. So I'm just going to quickly talk about the 8 books I DNF'd. I'm literally going to just tell you what they were. One of them was a library book, and that was These Precious Days by Anne Patchett. But sort of like, there's a plus and a negative for this, right? Like, the plus is that the other 7 books were from my physical TBR, so I've got rid of 7 books. The negative is that I thought I was going to like those 7 books, and it's a bit shit that I haven't, so yeah, not great. So I'm just going to quickly go through those so you can see what books have been removed from my TBR, because otherwise you'll have seen them sitting behind me for years and then you'll be like, oh, you know, Mercedes never spoke about those books. So if I mention them here, you know why. So I DNF'd 2 books that were off my fantasy TBR for this year. One of them is The Unbroken by C.L. Clarke, and the other is The One Kingdom by Sean Russell. These 2 took up a lot of my reading. I got a couple of 100 pages into each of them before I gave up, which was a bit frustrating. Then I DNF'd Stephen Florida by Gary Bash. This has been a book for years I've been convinced I would really adore, so that was a shame. Another one which I know lots of people really like is The Border of Paradise by Esme Wei-Jean Wang. Writing style just didn't work for me. Then I got a decent way into Yellowbird, Oil, Murder and a Woman's Search for Justice in Indian Country by Sierra Crane Murdoch. Was enjoying it, then the writing style and the focus changed and I stopped enjoying it. This next one I was gutted about. This is a 5-star prediction for me, so I'll talk about this more in my 5-star predictions or wrap up once I've read them all. This is Sleepovers by Ashley Bryant Phillips. This is a short story collection. Didn't like the writing style at all. And then really sadly, I got lots of books for my birthday in May, and I focused on books I really thought, I mean, you know, you always buy books you really think you're going to love, but a lot of them have been books I'd wanted for a while but were a bit pricier. And this was one of them. That's The Seed Keeper by Diane Wilson. Got about halfway through this and really didn't want to DNF it, but it just wasn't working for me at all. And yeah, was pretty gutted about that because it wasn't cheap, and yeah, I thought it could be a 5-star read for me. So yeah, those 7 books all got taken off my TBR, and quite a few of those were books that were like pre-2022 books. They've been on my TBR for a while, so there's that. And then because I had like quite a rubbish success rate in May with reading books off my TBR, I thought, you know what, I'm going to have another look through them and see if there's any others I think that I don't ever feel like I want to reach for and I've heard not great things about, and I should just take off because like I don't want to have more books I keep DNFing. And so I removed quite a few other books off my TBR. Now I will say, out of this list, only one of these I actually bought myself through choice. The rest of them were sent to me from publishers, and that happens sometimes. You know, publishers will send me books. Sometimes they'll message me and say, would you like a copy, and sometimes they'll just send them. And a lot of the time I don't keep them, but sometimes I do. And yeah, I'm sort of pleased now that I'm not sent many books at all. I moved house and I told a lot of publishers my new address, but I think a lot of them have like still probably sending stuff to the old house, which I don't think the tenants are very happy about, but you know, there's not much I can do about it when I've told these publishers my address. So there's that. So the only one that I bought myself is A World Between by Emily Hashimoto. I decided to unhaul this because I picked this up last year and I read a good chunk in one sitting, like 100 pages. And I just thought the writing style wasn't great, but I'd kept it around because I really loved the premise. And then I thought, you know what, I never feel like I want to reach for it because I didn't really enjoy the writing style. So then I went and had a look at people's reviews, and a lot of people were like, I was so disappointed in the writing style, like it doesn't get better further in. So I decided to unhaul that one. And then, like I said, the rest were all sent to me from publishers. So I have 6 books here. I have 2 non-fiction, so I'll mention them first. I have Whose Story Is This? Old Conflicts, New Chapters by Rebecca Solnit. I've read one of her books and I thought it was pretty good. I do feel like her essay collections are very of the time, and because this now came out 2 or 3 years ago and I like haven't read it, I just, yeah, I don't know, there's like much more recent essay collections that have been published from I think more interesting perspectives than Rebecca Solnit, so I'm just not going to bother with that one. And the next one is Falling Is Like Flying by Manon Uphoff. And this is, I think, translated from the Dutch by Sam Garrett. This is a memoir. And I was always a bit dubious of whether this writing style would work for me. This is all kind of low ratings on Goodreads. And I had a flick through and then I had a look at the reviews and I just thought, I'm not going to keep this. Another one is Island, written by Siri van der Helm Jacobsen, translated from the Danish by Caroline Waite. And I read the first few pages of this and just didn't really like the writing style, didn't work for me, so I decided to DNF it. This one was sent unrequested, sounded like the sort of book I wouldn't really enjoy. I kept it for a couple of months and then thought, you know, I'm never going to want to pick this up, and that is White on White by Seagull Savas. I think this is like a novel about like this depressed woman. I think there's art linked to it. I'm not really into either of those 2 vibes. And then I have Palace of the Drowned by Christine Mangan, which I was interested in but has got pretty poor reviews. And even though I enjoyed her debut novel, I didn't love it, so I just felt like I wasn't going to reach for this over like all the other books I had. It's fallen. And then I also have The Hemlock Cure by Joanne Byrne. Now, I was intrigued by this one, and this is a historical fiction novel, but then I felt like I'd read a few historical fiction novels that come out recently, and they'd just been like mediocre, and this was getting like similar reviews to them. I think there's a lot of historical fiction that comes out that I would class as like more easy, accessible historical fiction, but I don't think I end up loving, and I just felt like this was going to sort of fall into that camp, so I decided to unhaul that one. So for my TBR tracker for May, like a lot came in and went out in May. I've already spoken about the ones that went out because, like I said, I read 3, I DNF'd quite a few, and then I just unhauled some. So the DNFs plus the ones I unhauled was 14 books were like taken off my TBR because of that. But then I bought in 26 books. So, and that was because it was my birthday month and I was gifted, I think, 8 books, and then I bought the rest. Okay, so it's not great. I spent £260 in May. Now, a decent chunk of that was like money my parents gave me for my birthday, so, or my mum gave me for her birthday I should say. But yeah, I think once I'd like broken the seal and like bought like a decent amount of books in one go, which is something I hadn't done earlier in the year. I think most books I bought in one go was like 5. It was like I'd opened the floodgates and I couldn't stop. So yeah, not great. What I will say is the vast majority of these were bought from an in-person independent bookshop, and so they were a bit pricier, so that's why it came to like £260 for, what, 18 books I guess. And the ones that weren't bought from an independent shop were bought from Blackwell's, and I bought 3, a trilogy from Abe Books, because they're like out of print, they're not even published in the UK, and I had to get hold of them from there. I bought 1 book from Amazon, which I was very disappointed in myself about because I've not been using Amazon, but I started to listen to Ohio by Stephen Markley on audio, and I was loving it and I wanted to read it. And I wanted to get a copy as soon as possible. It's not published in the UK, so I knew I was going to have to wait a few days. But my partner has Amazon Prime, so I got him to get it for me on his Amazon Prime. So that's like, that was £9.17. So I've given £9.17 to Amazon this year. I'm not happy about it, but like, it's way better than I used to be. So that was a massive problem. So basically in May, my monthly change was that I added 11 books to my TBR, because once you like dealt with all the ones that went out and all the ones that came in, these like, the difference was 11. So I ended up having 75 books on my physical TBR at the end of May, which isn't great. Now all of those books I hauled separately. I've shown you in those 2 birthday book hauls, apart from these last 3, and these are the ones that I bought from Abe Books. This first one, The Dark Mirror by Juliet Marillier, is the first book, I don't know, it's really shiny, in the Breedeye Chronicles, and this is on my fantasy TBR. And I wanted to get all 3 of them matching, which was quite difficult to do because, like I said, they're not published in the UK, really tricky to find, and so I spent hours across like a few months, to be honest, trying to find a collection, and I found this collection on eBay. It wasn't Abe Books, it was eBay, for £44, and I bought the 3 of them, because that's The Dark Mirror, I can't remember the other, yes, it says book 2, Blade of Four True, and The Well of Shades. I don't like any of these covers, I think they're awful, in particular like that one is like not good, is it? And when I arrived I was so gutted because I'd spent all this time like searching, and I bought them all from one seller because I thought, you know, then they're going to match. And they arrived, and in the photo they all look the same height, and look, the first one's shorter. And they are library copies, so all these stickers I need to try and get off. And so the first one's shorter and it doesn't have a dust jacket. So after all that bloody research, they've arrived not matching anyway. So yeah, basically I just need to go on holiday to like Australia, because they have the nicest editions that are like landscapes, and then I could probably buy them new in a bookshop, but yeah, so there's that. So those are the only books I haven't shown you that I purchased in May. Then in the month of June, I read 7 books, and it says here that 5 of them were books I'd hauled, and 2 of them were on audio, although I'm not quite sure how I marked Ohio, because I read that and audiobooked it. So in the month of June, yeah, 5 books came off my TBR, and in terms of the pages read, I read 2,931 pages, 1,803 of those were books I read physically, 564 were books I listened to on audio, and then I DNF'd quite a few books still, and that was 565 pages worth of DNFs. So I DNF'd 6 books in the month of June, all 6 of them were from my own TBR, so I removed them, and sadly quite a few of them were new books, so I'll go through those ones first. I've not even spoken about this one because I bought this one in June. I wasn't going to buy any books in June, and then I was having a bit of a feeling sorry for myself one day, and I was walking past Waterstones and I went in. And I read the first couple of pages of this book and I liked it, and it was on my fantasy TBR, but I actually had it on my library list and I was waiting for it to come in, and then I read the first couple of pages and I just thought, you know what, I just feel like really reading like an easy fantasy today. So I bought it and cancelled my hold, and I wish I hadn't because I DNF'd it. And that is The Stardust Thief by Chelsea Abdullah. This is like a really cool copy with the orange end papers. I got halfway through this, I liked the start, and then once the plot got going, I just felt that it got like pretty undeveloped, so that was a bit annoying. And then I had 2 books for a sort of book club I've joined that's run by an independent bookshop. One of them I like had to purchase without knowing what it was, and I wouldn't have purchased it otherwise, so I'm not surprised by this DNF at all. And that's The Deloria by Missouri Williams. I literally read 3 pages, absolutely hate it, don't want to read a book like this, not for me. The next one is Woman Eating by Claire Coda. I got halfway through this one and just didn't like it. And then the last one, which is a new book, and this is the one I'm the most disappointed in, is The Parted Earth by Anjali Angetti. Again, I paid like £17 for this book with my birthday money in May, and I was really excited about it, and yeah, didn't like the writing style at all, wouldn't recommend it, DNF'd it halfway through. And then 2 books that had been on my sort of older TBR, I'd had these for longer, in the start of 2022, are Metal Fish Falling Snow by Kath Moore. This is an Australian YA book, it just didn't work for me, the writing style didn't work to DNF that. And sadly, another book of my 5-star predictions that I DNF'd is Betty by Tiffany McDaniel. I know loads of people absolutely adore this book, just didn't like the writing style, got over 100 pages through it and DNF'd it. So like I said, I wasn't planning to buy any books in June, but I went into Waterstones and bought The Stardust Thief, so like spent the money on that at the start of the month. So I think I spent about like £37.50, around that in June, all in Waterstones. It's the other 3 books out, one of which I have read, Instructions for a Heatwave by Maggie O'Farrell, Mrs. March by Virginia Fato, and Still Life by Sarah Winman. So I was only going in to try and find this, but then I went past the table and they had these, buy one get one, half price. And I was like, I'm just going to do it. So that was a fail because I was intending to not buy any books, and I did buy 4, but obviously could have been worse. So that means in June I got my TBR to go down by 7 books because, like I said, I read 5 books, I unhauled 6 because of those DNFs, and I only bought 4 in, so that's Alba's making loads of noise, by the way. So yeah, my TBR went down by 7 books. So I'm like, at the end of June, my TBR was at 68. So not doing well at all because I started the year at 67. So I should have been at like half 67 because we're halfway through the year, and instead I've gone up 1 book. So I'm doing very, very badly. So I thought I would try and like chat with you and figure out why I'm failing so badly. So I guess firstly, I hauled 53 books in the year so far. Like I said, a decent chunk of those were during my birthday month. In fact, half of those were in 1 month. So I think May just entirely screwed me over. Like if I'd kept like hauling around 5, which is what I've been doing most months, 5 or less, then I would have hauled like 25 books at the start of the year. And my TBR would be like significantly lower, but yeah, I just messed up pretty badly in May, which is annoying me because obviously I've tried to read a few of those books, and quite a few of them I've DNF'd, so yeah, rubbish. So out of the 53 books I've hauled, I've read 16 of them and I've DNF'd 9 of them, so I've still got 28 left to read, which is the books behind me and a few that I've got scattered around because I've just spoken to you about them. So I find it interesting because I know a lot of people, when I talk about DNFing, will say I'm really good at like knowing my own taste, so I like never DNF books. And I always find that interesting because in my mind, all you can know from the blurb, unless they're an author you've read before and enjoyed, is what the story's about. And really, it doesn't tell you anything about the writing style. Yes, there can be like quotes from other authors being like, oh, this is really fast paced, or the writing's beautiful, but like, pace is a different thing for each reader. What you might think is fast paced, I might not, vice versa. What you might think is beautiful writing, I might not. Perfect example is Betty by Tiffany McDaniel. I can completely see why loads of people think that book is beautifully written, but I didn't personally like the writing style. So it makes sense to me completely that if I buy some books without reading a couple of pages in a bookshop, I'm going to have a lot of DNFs. And the reason I buy a lot of books without seeing them in a bookshop is because I buy a lot of books that are not published in the UK. And a lot of the books I've had, like I've been DNFing, are ones that I picked up without having a chance to read any of them. One of my Patreons kindly mentioned in one of my DNF videos that if I'm struggling with DNFing a lot of books that I've like bought online and didn't have a chance to see if I like the writing style, what I could do is use Amazon for the like Kindle samples, because I do have an e-reader, I don't use it very often. So I could download the sample, see if I like the writing style, and then if I don't, I just know not to buy that one. If I do, I'll then buy it somewhere other than Amazon. And I'm 100% going to do that from now on with books that I can't like browse physically in a bookshop, because all the ones I've had like a poor success rate with so far, I know if I'd have been in a bookshop and read a few pages, I wouldn't have bought them, because within like 2 pages, some of these within like 2 sentences that have been like, this writing style is not for me. So that's definitely something I'm going to try and do, and I think that could really reduce the amount of books I buy and then very quickly DNF, because it's just, and it is just demoralising, like, so yeah, I'm going to try and avoid that. And then also I had a little scan of how many books I have on each shelf. So my bookshelves are separated. The top shelf is all my new books that I bought this year. This shelf is all the books I bought in 2021 and still haven't read. And the bottom shelf is all the books I've owned for longer than that, some of them like for 10 years, not great. So I have on each shelf, like I said, I have 28 books on the top shelf. I have 18 books on the middle shelf and then 23 books on the bottom shelf. So some of these numbers are a bit like rounded up or rounded down because, you know, I didn't have the exact multiplier of 6 on all the shelves. So that means each month I need to read around 5 books from this shelf. If I manage that, then later in the year I think I can drop it to like 4, but I'm going to say 5 is my number. From this middle shelf I need to read 3 books each month, and from this bottom shelf I need to read 4 books each month. Now, that does allow for DNFs, right? Because DNFs reduce my TBR. So if one month I read 3 and DNF 2, that's reduced it by 5. I'm absolutely fine with that. Obviously I'm not hoping for DNFs because I want to like all these books, but I will let that like figure into my numbers because I think that makes sense. So yeah, I always said that I wanted to get to 0, bearing in mind the books I brought into the year. I don't really mind if I get into January 2023 and I've got like 5 or 10 books unread that I bought in 2022. It'd be wonderful to not have that, but I don't mind if that's what happens. So yeah, the aim is to get it to 0 entirely, but if it's like there's a few left on this top shelf and I've only had them for a few months, that's fine. So yeah, like, so one of the ways I'm going to reduce the physical TBR, like get it to 0, is doing the Kindle sample option, so trying to buy less books. I'll inevitably end up DNFing. The second thing is I just want to have a pause from buying books. I am stopping myself from buying books just for the foreseeable. I've got enough books for getting on with. I had a little look, and yeah, there are loads of books I had on my pre-order list that I wanted to get to, but I'm allowing myself a few exceptions, but other than that, I'm not going to be buying any books. The exceptions are, I mentioned I think 3 books in my summer TBR video, which I'll link above, which I want to buy because they're books I think I'll really love, and so they're exceptions. And then I have, the only other exceptions are, there's some fantasy series I've read the first book of and I really want to carry on, and I'm going to allow myself to buy those. The library don't have copies, so I'm going to purchase those. But other than that, there's loads of other books I had on my pre-order list. I'm just not going to get them. And if I get to later in the year and I've managed to reduce this dramatically, then I will let myself start buying a couple of books a month again. But for now, there's absolutely no need. I have more than enough books for getting on with. And yeah, like, that should be a big thing, just like completely reducing the books I bring in. So Kindle sample, reducing the books I bring in. And then something else I also wanted to have a little look at is I was wondering if the amount of books I DNF a month like reduces my overall reading. And what I mean by that is I wanted to see if like feeling demoralised by DNFing books leads to me not wanting to pick books up. And I think that is the case because I sort of ordered my reading month by the amount of pages I read in total compared to the amount of pages I read of books I DNF'd. Does that make sense? So my number 1 reading month was February. I read 4,869 pages, but that was my lowest month for DNFing. I only DNF'd 130 pages. So I think when I'm on a reading roll and I'm barely DNFing anything, I'm excited to read more. I want to pick more books up. Whereas the exact reverse happened in May. Yes, I was busy, but in May, I only read 2,506 pages, which is the lowest amount I've read a month, but 993 of those pages were DNFs. So like, it's interesting that those months were exactly like inversed. So the month I like read the most books I didn't enjoy, I read the least, and the month I read the least books I didn't enjoy, I read the most. And something else I was having a look at in those more successful months is what types of book I read. And I realised that in the months where I'm more successful, I have a really varied reading month. So I had some fantasy in there. I tend to read fantasy much quicker. I also had like some contemporary romance in there, which I find really quick reads. And I think when I get through books more quickly, I'm more encouraged to read more. So certainly I don't want to ignore books that I think will slow me down, but I think I want to be really aware of balancing those books well, and not having a month where I'm just reading loads of serious literary fiction or serious non-fiction, and then another month where I read all the easy reads. I want to try and make sure that happens sort of, you know, more in cohesion, because definitely my best reading months of the year have been months where I've just read lots of different stuff. So there is my plans. I mean, I felt much more confident at the start of the year that I could do this, because I think I needed to like read 5 books a month compared to 13, which is the situation I've now got myself in. But I still think it's doable. I'm still feeling pretty confident. And yeah, let me know what your thoughts are, if you have any tips or tricks, if you have any questions, anything I missed. And yeah, I will be happy to chat down below in the comments about how my reading is going. Of course, if you are doing any sort of TBR challenge, I love these types of things, so do let me know how you're doing it down below, because I am fascinated by hearing how other people try to structure these challenges. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!